File Explorer, previously known as Windows Explorer, is a file manager application that is included with releases of the Microsoft Windows operating system from Windows 95 onwards. It provides a graphical user interface for accessing the file systems. It is also the component of the operating system that presents many user interface items on the monitor, such as the taskbar and desktop. Controlling the computer is possible without Windows Explorer running. Located in the C/Windows directory, it is sometimes referred to as the Windows shell, explorer.exe, or simply Explorer. Overview: Windows Explorer was first included with Windows 95 as a replacement for File Manager, which came with all versions of Windows 3.x operating systems. Explorer could be accessed by double-clicking the new My Computer desktop icon, or launched from the new Start menu that replaced the earlier Program Manager. There is also a shortcut key combination, Windows key plus E. Successive versions of Windows introduced new features and capabilities, removed other features, and generally progressed from being a simple file system navigation tool into a task-based file management system. While Windows Explorer, or File Explorer is a term most commonly used to describe the file management aspect of the operating system, the Explorer process also houses the operating system unregistered trademark search functionality and file type associations, and is responsible for displaying the desktop icons, the Start menu, the taskbar, and the control panel. Collectively, these features are known as the Windows shell. After a user logs in, the Explorer process is created by userinit process. Userinit performs some initialization of the user environment and then looks in the registry at the shell value and creates a process to run the system-defined shell by default, explorer.exe. Then userinit exits. This is why explorer.exe is shown by various process explorers with no parent its parent has exited. History: in 1995, Microsoft first released test versions of a shell refresh, named the Shell Technology Preview, and often referred to informally as New Shell. The update was designed to replace the Windows 3.x Program Manager file manager-based shell with Windows Explorer. The release provided capabilities quite similar to that of the Windows Chicago shell during its late beta phases, however was intended to be nothing more than a test release. There were two public releases of the Shell Technology Preview, made available to Msdn and CompuServe users, May 26, 1995 and August 8, 1995. Both held Windows Explorer builds of 3.51.1053.1. The Shell Technology Preview program never saw a final release under NT 3.51. The entire program was moved across to the Cairo Development Group, who finally integrated the new shell design into the NT code with the release of NT 4.0 in July 1996. Windows 98 and Windows Desktop Update with the release of the Windows Desktop Update, Windows Explorer became integrated with Internet Explorer, most notably with the addition of navigation arrows for moving between recently visited directories, as well as Internet Explorer unregistered trademark favorites menu. At the time, these changes raised antitrust concerns about the incorporation of what was seen as an application feature, but this feature has since been emulated by most other file browsers. An address bar was also added to Windows Explorer, which a user could type in directory paths directly, and be taken to that folder. It also operated as a URL bar for Internet addresses. Web pages would open in the main portion of the window. Another feature that was based on Internet Explorer technology was customized folders. Such folders contained a hidden web page that controlled the way the Windows Explorer displayed the contents of the folder. This feature proved to have security vulnerabilities due to its reliance on ActiveX objects and scripting, and was removed with the introduction of Windows XP. Other new features: the ability to add other toolbars to the taskbar, the most visible of these being Quick Launch. Active Desktop, which made it possible to turn the desktop background itself into a web page. Single-click activation of icons in Windows Explorer, adhering to a web page paradigm. Desktop channels. New virtual folders for scheduled tasks and web folders. equals Windows ME and Windows 2000 equals. The Web Style Folders view, with the left Explorer pane displaying details for the object currently selected, is turned on by default. For certain file types, such as pictures and media files, a preview is also displayed in the left pane. The Windows 2000 Explorer featured an interactive media player as the previewer for sound and video files. However, such a previewer can be enabled in Windows ME through the use of folder customization templates. Windows Explorer in Windows 2000 and Windows ME allows for custom thumbnail previewers and tooltip handlers. The default file tooltip displays file title, author, subject and comments. This metadata may be read from a special NTFS stream, if the file is on an NTFS volume, or from an COM structured storage stream, if the file is a structured storage document. All Microsoft Office documents since Office 95 make use of structured storage, so their metadata is displayable in the Windows 2000 Explorer default tooltip. File shortcuts can also store comments which are displayed as a tooltip when the mouse hovers over the shortcut. The right-hand pane, which usually just lists files and folders, can also be customized. For example, the contents of the system folders aren't displayed by default, instead showing in the right pane a warning to the user that modifying the contents of the system folders could harm their computer. It's possible to define additional Explorer panes by using div elements in folder template files. This feature was abused by computer viruses that employed malicious scripts, Java applets, or ActiveX controls in folder template files as their infection vector. Two such viruses are VBS-RAW-C and VBS-ReadLog-A. Other Explorer UI elements that can be customized include columns in Details view, icon overlays, and search providers. The new DHTML-based search pane is integrated into Windows 2000 Explorer, unlike the separate search dialog found in all previous Explorer versions. Search capabilities were added, offering full-text searches of documents, with options to filter by date, size, and file type. The indexing service has also been integrated into the operating system, and the search pane built into Explorer allows searching files indexed by its database. The ability to customize the standard buttons was also added. Windows XP and Windows Server 2003 equals. There were significant changes made to Windows Explorer and Windows XP, both visually and functionally. Microsoft focused especially on making Explorer more discoverable and task-based, as well as adding a number of features to reflect the growing use of a computer as a digital hub. Windows Explorer and Windows Server 2003 contains all the same features as Windows XP, but the task panes and search companion are disabled by default. Task pane. The task pane is displayed on the left-hand side of the window instead of the traditional folder tree view. It presents the user with a list of common actions and destinations that are relevant to the current directory or file, selected. For instance, when in a directory containing mostly pictures, a set of picture tasks is shown, offering the options to display these pictures as a slideshow, to print them out, or to go online to order prints. Conversely, a folder containing music files would offer options to play those files in a media player, or to go online to purchase music. Windows XP had a media bar, but it was removed with SP1. The media bar was only available with Windows XP RTM. Every folder also has file and folder tasks, offering options to create new folders, share a folder on the local network, publish files or folders to a website, and other common tasks like copying, renaming, moving, and deleting files or folders. File types that have identified themselves as being printable also have an option listed to print the file. Underneath file and folder tasks is other places, with links to other common locations such as My Computer, Control Panel, and My Documents. These also change depending on what folder the user was in, leading to some criticism of Microsoft for not being consistent in displaying navigation choices. Underneath other places is a details pane which gives additional information, typically file size and date, but depending on the file type, a thumbnail preview, author, image dimensions, or other details. The Folders button on the Windows Explorer toolbar toggles between the traditional tree view of folders and the task pane. Users can get rid of the task pane or restore it using the sequence: Tools Folder Options General Show Common Tasks. Use Windows Classic folders. Search Companion. Microsoft introduced animated search companions in an attempt to make searching more engaging and friendly. The default character is a puppy named Rover, with 3 other characters also available. These search companions bear a great deal of similarity to Microsoft Office unregistered trademark Office assistants, even incorporating tricks and sound effects. The search capability itself is fairly similar to Windows ME and Windows 2000, with one major addition: search can also be instructed to search only files that are categorically documents, or pictures, music and video. This feature is noteworthy largely because of how Windows determines what types of files can be classified under these categories. In order to maintain a relevant list of file types, Windows Explorer connects to Microsoft and downloads a set of XML files that define what these file types are. The search companion can be disabled in favor of the classic search pane used in Windows 2000 by using the Tweak UI applet from Microsoft's Power Toys for Windows XP, or by manually editing the registry. Image handling. Windows XP improves image preview in Explorer by offering a film strip view. Back and previous buttons facilitate navigation through the pictures, and a pair of rotate buttons offer 90-degree clockwise and counterclockwise rotation of images. Aside from the film strip view mode, there is a thumbnails mode, which displays thumbnail-sized images in the folder. A folder containing images will also show thumbnails of 4 of the images from that folder overlaid on top of a large folder icon. Web publishing. Websites that offer image hosting services can be plugged into Windows Explorer, which the user can use to select images on their computer, and have them uploaded correctly without dealing with comparatively complex solutions involving FTP or web interfaces. Other changes. Explorer gained the ability to understand the metadata of a number of types of files. For example, with images from a digital camera, the EXIF information can be viewed, both in the Properties pages for the photo itself, as well as via optional additional Details view columns. A tile view mode was added, which displays the Filet unregistered trademark icon in a larger size, and places the file name, descriptive type, and additional information to the right. The Details view also presented an additional option called Show in Groups, which allows the Explorer to separate its contents by headings based on the field which is used to sort the items. The taskbar can be locked to prevent it from accidentally being moved. Windows Explorer also gained the ability to burn CDs and DVD-RAM disks in Windows XP. Removed and changed features. The sort order has changed compared to the one in Windows 2000. For file names containing numbers, Windows Explorer now tries to sort based on numerical value rather than just comparing each number digit by digit for every character position in the file name. Windows Vista and Windows Server 2008 Search, organizing and metadata. Windows Explorer includes significant changes from previous versions of Windows, such as improved filtering, sorting, grouping and stacking. Combined with integrated desktop search, Windows Explorer allows users to find and organize their files in new ways, such as stacks. The stacks view groups files according to the criterion specified by the user. Stacks can be clicked to filter the files shown in Windows Explorer. There is also the ability to save searches as virtual folders or search folders. A search folder is simply an XML file, which stores the query in a form that can be used by the Windows search subsystem. When accessed, the search is executed, and the results are aggregated and presented as a virtual folder. When sorting items, the sort order no longer remains consistently ascending or descending. Each property has a preferred sort direction. For example, sort by date defaults to descending order, as does size. But name and type default to ascending order. Searching for files containing a given text string became problematic with Vista unless the files have been indexed. An alternative is to use the findstr command line function. After right-clicking on a folder, one can open a command line prompt in that folder. Windows Explorer also contains modifications in the visualization of files on a computer. A new addition to Windows Explorer in Vista and Server 2008 is the Details pane, which displays metadata and information relating to the currently selected file or folder. The Details pane will also display a thumbnail of the file or an icon of the file type if the file does not contain visual information. Furthermore, different imagery is overlaid on thumbnails to give more information about the file, such as a picture frame around the thumbnail of an image file, or a film strip on a video file. Thumbnails can be zoomed on. The Details pane also allows for the change of some textual metadata such as author and title in files that support them within Windows Explorer. A new type of metadata called tags allows users to add descriptive terms to documents for easier categorization and retrieval. Some files support open metadata, allowing users to define new types of metadata for their files. Out of the box, Windows Vista and Windows Server 2008 supports Microsoft Office documents and most audio and video files. Support for other file types can however be added by writing specialized software to retrieve the metadata at the shallow unregistered trademark S request. Metadata stored in a file unregistered trademark S alternate stream only on NTFS volumes cannot be viewed and edited through the Summary tab of the file unregistered trademark S properties anymore. Instead, all metadata is stored inside the file, so that it will always travel with the file and not be dependent on the file system. Layout and icons. Windows Explorer in Windows Vista and Windows Server 2008 also introduces a new layout. The task panes from Windows XP are replaced with a toolbar on top and a navigation pane on the left. The navigation pane contains commonly accessed folders and pre-populated search folders. 8 different views are available to view files and folders, namely, List, Details, Small Icons, Medium Icons, Large Icons, Extra Large Icons, Tiles or Content. Automatic Folder Type Discovery automatically detects the contents of a folder and display the correct detail settings. File and folder actions such as cut, copy, paste, undo, redo, delete, rename and properties are built into a drop-down menu which appears when the Organize button is clicked. It is also possible to change the layout of the Explorer window by using the Organize button. Users can select whether to display classic menus, a search pane, a preview pane, a reading pane, and/or the navigation pane. The preview pane allows for previewing files in addition to the details pane. Also, Explorer can show a preview for any image format if the necessary codec for the format is installed in the Windows imaging component. Windows Vista saw the introduction of the Breadcrumb Bar for easier navigation. As opposed to the prior address bar which displayed the current folder in a simple editable combo box, this new style structures the path into clickable levels of folder hierarchy, enabling the user to skip as many levels as desired in one click rather than repeatedly clicking up. It is also possible to navigate to any subfolder of the current folder using the arrow to the right of the last item. The menu bar is now hidden by default but reappears temporarily when the user presses Alt. Checkboxes in Windows Explorer allow the selection of multiple files. Free and used space on all drives is shown in horizontal indicator bars. Icons of various sizes are supported: a Euro 16x16, 24x24, 32x32, 48x48, 64x64, 96x96, 128x128 and 256x256. Windows Explorer can zoom the icons in and out using a slider or by holding down the Ctrl key and using the mouse scroll wheel. Other changes: with the release of Windows Vista and Server 2008 and Windows Internet Explorer 7 for Windows XP, Internet Explorer is no longer integrated with Windows Explorer. In Windows Vista and Server 2008, Windows Explorer no longer displays web pages, and IE7 does not support use as a file manager, although one will separately launch the other as necessary. When moving or copying files from one folder to another, if two files have the same name, an option is now available to rename the file. In previous versions of Windows, the user was prompted to choose either a replacement or cancel moving the file. Also, when renaming a file, Explorer only highlights the file name without selecting the extension. Renaming multiple files is quicker as pressing Tab automatically renames the existing file or folder and opens the file name text field for the next file for renaming. Shift plus Tab allow renaming in the same manner upwards. Support for burning data on DVDs in addition to CDs and DVD-RAM using version 2.0 of the Image Mastering API was added. In case a file is in use by another application, Windows Explorer informs users to close the application and retry the file operation. Also, a new interface if file is in use is introduced into the API which developers can use to let other applications switch to the main window of the application that has the file open or simply close the file from the File in Use dialog. If the running application exposes these operations by means of the File in Use interface, Windows Explorer, upon encountering a locked file, allows the user to close the file or switch to the application from the dialog box itself. Removed and changed features. The ability to customize the layout and buttons on the toolbars has been removed in Windows Vista Euro unregistered trademark S Explorer, as has the ability to add a password to a zip file. The toolbar button in Explorer to go up one folder from the current folder has been removed. Although still fully available from the menus and keyboard shortcuts, toolbar buttons for cut, copy, paste, undo, delete, properties and some others are no longer available. The menu bar is also hidden by default, but is still available by pressing the Alt key, or changing its visibility in the layout options. Several other features are removed such as showing the size on the status bar without selecting items, storing metadata in NTFS secondary streams, the column provider interface which allows addition of custom columns to Explorer and folder background customization using desktop NI. The option managing pairs of web pages and folders is also removed, and the user has no way of telling Vista that HTML file in the folder with the same name that was created when saving a complete web page from IE should be treated separately, that is, they cannot delete the folder without deleting the HTML file as well. A solution to this is provided on. After the webpairs.reg file has been merged into the registry, the Managing Pairs of Web Pages and Folders option is available in the Folder Options View tab. The ability to right-click a folder and hit Search was removed in Windows Vista Service Pack 1. Users must open the folder they wish to search in and enter their keywords in the search field located on the top right corner of the window. Alternatively, users can specify other search parameters through the Advanced Search UI, which can be accessed by clicking on the Organize bar, and selecting Search Pane under the Layout submenu. Pressing F3 also opens the Advanced Search interface. Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008-02 Libraries. Windows Explorer in Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008-02 supports libraries, virtual folders described in a library MIS file that aggregates content from various locations including shared folders on networked systems if the shared folder has been indexed by the host system and present them in a unified view. Searching in a library automatically federates the query to the remote systems, in addition to searching on the local system, so that files on the remote systems are also searched. Unlike search folders, libraries are backed by a physical location which allows files to be saved in the libraries. Such files are transparently saved in the backing physical folder. The default save location for a library may be configured by the user, as can the default view layout for each library. Libraries are generally stored in the library's special folder, which allows them to be displayed on the navigation pane. By default, a new user account in Windows 7 contains 4 libraries, for different file types, documents, music, pictures, and videos. They are configured to include the user's profile folders for these respective file types, as well as the computer's corresponding public folders. In addition to aggregating multiple storage locations, libraries enable arrangement views and search filter suggestions. Arrangement views allow users to pivot their views of the library's contents based on metadata. For example, Selecting the by month view in the Pictures library will display photos in stacks, where each stack represents a month of photos based on the date they were taken. In the Music library, the by artist view will display stacks of albums from the artists in their collections, and browsing into an artist stack will then display the relevant albums. Search filter suggestions are a new feature of the Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 Explorer search box. When the user clicks in the search box, a menu shows up below it showing recent searches as well as suggested advanced query syntax filters that the user can type. When one is selected, the menu will update to show the possible values to filter by for that property, and this list is based on the current location and other parts of the query already typed. For example, selecting the tags filter or typing tags into the search box will display the list of possible tag values which will return search results. Arrangement views and search filter suggestions are database-backed features which require that all locations in the library be indexed by the Windows Search service. Local disk locations must be indexed by the local indexer, and Windows Explorer will automatically add locations to the indexing scope when they are included in a library. Remote locations can be indexed by the indexer on another Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 machine, on a Windows machine running Windows Search 4, or on another device that implements the MSWSP Remote Query Protocol. Federated Search. Windows Explorer also supports federating search to external data sources, such as custom databases or web services, that are exposed over the web and described via an open search definition. The federated location description is provided as a OSDX file. Once installed, the data source becomes queryable directly from Windows Explorer. Windows Explorer features, such as previews and thumbnails, work with the results of a federated search as well. Other changes: Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 supports showing icons in the context menu and creating cascaded context menus with static verbs in submenus using the registry instead of a shell extension. The search box in the Explorer window and the address bar can be resized. Certain folders in the navigation pane can be hidden to reduce clutter. Progress bars and overlay icons on an applications button in the taskbar. Content view which shows thumbnails and metadata. Buttons to toggle the preview pane and create a new folder. Removed and changed features. In Windows 7, several features have been removed from Windows Explorer, including the collapsible folder pane, overlay icon for shared items, remembering individual folder window sizes and positions, free disk space on the status bar, icons on the command bar, ability to disable auto-arrange and align to grid, sortable column headings in other views except Details view, ability to disable full row selection in Details view, automatic horizontal scrolling and scroll bar in the navigation pane and maintaining selection when sorting from the Edit menu. Windows 8 and Windows Server 2012 equals. The file manager on Windows 8 and Windows Server 2012 is renamed File Explorer, and introduces new features such as a redesigned interface incorporating a ribbon toolbar, and a redesigned file operation dialog that displays more detailed progress and allows for file operations to be paused and resumed. Extensibility: File Explorer can be extended to support non-default functionality by means of Windows shell extensions, which are COM objects that plug the extended functionality into Windows Explorer. Shell extensions can be in the form of shell extension handlers, toolbars or even namespace extensions that allow certain folders to be presented as a special folder. File Explorer also allows metadata for files to be added as NTFS alternate data streams, separate from the data stream for the file. Shell extension handlers are queried by the shell beforehand for modifying the action the shell takes. They can be associated on a per-file type basis where they will show up only when a particular action takes place on a particular file type or on a global basis which are always available. The shell supports the following extension handlers. Namespace extensions are used by Explorer to either display some data which are not persisted as files in a folder-like view, or to present data in a way that is different from their organization on the file system. This feature can be exploited by a relational file system like liquid folders or tables, clones of the ill-fated Microsoft WinFS. Special folders, such as My Computer and Network Places in Windows Explorer are implemented this way, as are Explorer views that let items in a mobile phone or digital camera be explored. Source control systems that use Explorer to browse source repositories also use namespace extensions to allow Explorer to browse the revisions. To implement a namespace extension, the IPAssist folder, a shell view, a shell folder, a shell browser and I/O window interfaces needs to be implemented and registered. The implementation needs to provide the logic for navigating the data store as well as describing the presentation. Windows Explorer will instantiate the COM objects as required. While Windows Explorer natively exposes the extensibility points as COM interfaces, .NET Framework can also be used to write extensions, using the COM interrupt functionality of .NET Framework. While Microsoft itself makes available extensions such as the Photo Info tool which are authored using .NET Framework, they currently recommend against writing managed shell extensions, as only one instance of the CLR can be loaded per process. This behavior would cause conflicts if multiple managed add-ins, targeting different versions of the CLR, are attempted to be run simultaneously. See also, comparison of file managers, File Manager, Windows Shell Replacement. Notes and references. External links, Sullivan, Kent. The Windows 95 User Interface, a case study in usability engineering, a copyright 1996 for Association for Computing Machinery, Incorporated. An article written by Kent Sullivan, a developer on the Windows 95 UI team, detailing the usability studies and development processes that led to the creation of the Windows 95 Explorer interface. How to customize the Windows Explorer views in Windows XP, Msdn, creating shell extension handlers, the complete idiota unregistered trademark guide to writing shell extensions, namespace extensions the undocumented Windows shell, info tip shell extension in Delphi.